The dominant narrative is a deliberate misdirection. While media focuses on symmetric threats like Beijing's warnings of a kinetic war over Taiwan, the actual vector of modern conflict has already shifted. The blueprint for 21st century escalation is not the launch of a missile. It is the calculated deployment of silence. The global system's true liability is not a fortified border. It is a handful of fiber optic cables on the ocean floor. We have already seen the proofs of concept, coordinated cyber attacks targeting critical infrastructure, such as the campaign against Romanian water and energy producers. According to analysts at RUSI, these are not isolated incidents. They are calibration tests for a systemic, low-cost vector designed to achieve maximum leverage against a superior power. Severing these data arteries, or blinding satellite surveillance, does not defeat a superpower. It transforms it into a blind Leviathan. The state retains its entire kinetic arsenal, its launch platforms, and its strategic assets. What it loses is its nervous system, situational awareness, command and control, and the ability to verify threats. A nation-state with global power projection becomes a deaf-blind giant, possessing immense strength but zero perception. This state of sensory deprivation forces the Leviathan into a launch-on warning protocol with no reliable warning. The mathematical certainty is that it will overreact. The aggressor's strategy is not to win a kinetic fight, but to force our own doctrine to initiate a disproportionate response to an unverified threat. The true liability is not the vulnerable cable. It is the escalatory protocol hardwired into our own command structure. This is the new blueprint. The attack is just the trigger for our own systemic failure. The pivot to asymmetric warfare is not a strategic preference. It is a declaration of insolvency. A state engages this protocol when the kinetic cost of symmetric state-on-state conflict exceeds its political and economic liquidity. The motive is not strength. It is a solvency crisis. The math no longer supports conventional operations. Consider Russia. Analysis from authorities like CSES frames the protracted conflict not as a military campaign, but as a severe domestic liability. An unpopular war creates a solvency crisis internally. The state's balance sheet for political capital is depleted. It is forced to find a new, lower-cost vector to project power without bankrupting its domestic legitimacy. Weakness forces a pivot to asymmetry. The objective is to externalize the solvency pressure. By executing low-cost, deniable attacks on critical but unguarded liabilities, like the cyber strikes on Romanian energy and water systems, the protocol forces the adversary into a constant high-cost, launch-on-warning posture. The financial burden of perpetual defense becomes the weapon. This is the blueprint. Weakness does not lead to surrender. It forces innovation in attrition warfare. The state leverages a cheap, deniable attack to create an expensive systemic problem for its adversary. The true liability is no longer the initial vulnerability. It is the mathematical certainty of our own escalatory and ultimately bankrupting response. The equation governing modern conflict is no longer complex. According to analysts at RUSI, the Royal United Services Institute, the kinetic cost to destroy a state asset has collapsed. A $5 million main battle tank can be neutralized by a $500 first-person view drone. This is not a one-to-one trade. It is a 10,000 to 1 leverage ratio against legacy systems. The battlefield is now an arbitrage market, and Western military hardware is trading at a catastrophic premium. The adversary's objective is not to win a symmetric engagement. It is to inflict a systemic solvency crisis on our defense budget. This economic inversion is termed the democratization of violence. High lethality vectors are no longer the exclusive domain of nation-states. Any non-state actor or a deniable state proxy can now access tools to strike critical infrastructure. The coordinated cyber attacks on the Romanian water authority and energy producer are the blueprint. No missiles were required. The attack vector was an internet connection, the kinetic cost near zero. The objective was to probe for an unguarded systemic liability, the digital equivalent of finding a single bolt that can shatter an entire bridge. The initial attack is bait. The true liability is the mathematical certainty of our response protocol. By making the initial strike economically insignificant, the adversary forces us into a zero-sum decision. Absorb the damage and signal weakness, or launch a disproportionate kinetic response. A single drone provokes a billion-dollar sortie. A minor cyber intrusion triggers a launch-on-warning posture across the entire economy. They are not attacking our assets. They are attacking our policy, leveraging our own escalatory doctrine to bankrupt us. The blueprint for systemic risk is not deployed on the primary battlefield. It's incubated in the gray zones. While you were watching headlines about a coordinated holiday cyber campaign against a Romanian water authority and energy producer, you missed the strategic signal. The attack was not the event. The event was the selection of the testing ground, a NATO member's unguarded civilian infrastructure, a low-cost, high-impact probe to measure response time and political will. These are not random acts of instability. They are calibrated experiments in proxy laboratories. Analysts at RUSI confirm this model. Use a non-state or deniable actor to apply pressure. The objective isn't conquest, but data collection. A CNN report noted how a theoretical raid in Venezuela could trigger systemic uncertainty across the entire Western military alliance, even impacting strategic assets in Greenland. The chaos is the message. It demonstrates that a single targeted action in a peripheral zone can create a solvency crisis at the core of the system. This is the function of the gray zone, to stage asymmetric attacks that force a kinetic cost calculation on a superior power. The Stimson Center's list of global risks for 2026 is not a series of independent threats. It is a menu of potential laboratories. Beijing's explicit warning of war risk over Taiwan isn't just rhetoric. It is the open declaration of a launch-on warning trigger. They are defining the precise pressure point that will force an escalatory response. The initial strike, whether it is cyber, economic, or proxy, is designed to corner the target into initiating that response. The math is irrefutable. Regional instability is merely the symptom. It provides the necessary cover and plausible deniability to test attack vectors. According to CSIS assessments, the next phase will not be a direct state-on-state conflict. It will be the activation of a new proxy laboratory in a region combining resource wealth with political fragility. The true liability is not the vulnerability of a single water plant in Romania. It is the mathematical certainty of our own disproportionate reaction when the next, more critical liability is struck. The launch-on-warning doctrine is not a strategy. It is a mathematical trap. The protocol dictates that a kinetic response is authorized the moment a threat is detected, not after it strikes. This was designed for a symmetric world of radar and verifiable ballistics. In that world, the liability was the incoming warhead. Today, the liability is the signal itself. This doctrine creates a systemic vulnerability. An adversary does not need to launch a missile. They only need to create the illusion of one. A low-cost, deniable cyber vector targeting early warning systems generates a fog of digital war. It forces the command authority into a zero-sum solvency crisis against the clock. The objective is not to blind the radar. The objective is to force a choice. If the commander hesitates and the threat is real, they absorb a decapitating first strike. If they follow protocol and launch on a false warning, they initiate a disproportionate kinetic escalation. The attacker has leveraged our own protocol against us. This is not theoretical. Coordinated cyber campaigns against critical infrastructure, such as the attacks on Romanian water and energy producers, are the blueprint. They are test runs for systemic disruption. CSIS reports confirm that this asymmetric vector is now considered a primary global risk, exploiting the seams of legacy defense protocols. The mathematical certainty is that the pressure to escalate is the true weapon. With actors like Beijing issuing direct warnings of war risk over geopolitical flashpoints, the fog of digital war is no longer a fringe scenario. It is an active liability waiting for a trigger. The attack is not the end game. Forcing our response is. The blueprint for systemic failure is not a symmetric state-on-state declaration of war. It is a protocol of asymmetric escalation. The playbook was tested. CSIS reports detail the 2023 cyber attacks on Romanian water and energy infrastructure. These were not random. They were a coordinated campaign executed during a holiday, a period of maximum systemic vulnerability. This is the model. A low-cost, deniable vector targeting a critical but unguarded liability. The attack itself is misdirection. The objective is to force the superior power into a zero-sum choice. Beijing's official warnings of war risk over Taiwan are not just rhetoric. They are the explicit framing of an escalatory tripwire. An attack on a U.S. system, if even vaguely attributable to Chinese proxies, forces a launch-on warning decision matrix. The true liability is not the initial vulnerability, it is the mathematical certainty of our own escalatory reaction to that pressure. Analysts at RUSI confirm that uncertainty within the Western military alliance is a known and exploitable attack surface. The calibration shot will not be a declaration. It will be an act of God, with digital fingerprints pointing in 3 different directions. It will be engineered to maximize political division and paralyze a response just long enough for the economic damage to become a solvency crisis. The calibration. Forecast. Within the next 12 months, during a period of peak domestic political distraction, expect a coordinated cyber-physical attack targeting the Port of Los Angeles, Long Beach. This will not be a simple data breach. It will be a logistics decapitation. The shutdown of automated crane operations, the corruption of container manifests, and the tripping of local power substations. It will be designed to be attribution impossible. The objective is not the blackout. The objective is our response.